Today, Joaquin Kalachi is the creator of Streaminy, is going to be talking through his tool and the experience he's had streaming data out of Materialize. Joaquin's a experienced data engineer with full stack Node, React, and GraphQL experience based out of Argentina. And to give a little bit of context of why his tool is so interesting, Materialize, as you know, is wire compatible with Postgres, meaning that all of these Postgres tools can query and read data out of it. But and this includes tools like BI tools like Metabase, but there's a limitation with this approach in that all of the tools were built to talk to a Postgres database, which means they fetch data that's only point in time, and they try and minimize the amount of queries or the number of repeated queries that they're making to the database, because they know it takes a lot of work for the database to answer those. So they do things like they refuse to auto-update their dashboards and views, or they cache the data, and they don't think at all about updating dashboards in place. They just expect a user to kind of refresh the page when they want or when they have updated data. And that works well for Postgres databases, but Materialize maintains the results in memory. And so it doesn't mind if clients like BI tools pull it many times, or even better, if they actually subscribe to a stream of updates as they happen. And Streaminy is the first tool we've seen that really takes advantage of this different paradigm. So before I hand it off to Joaquin, just some housekeeping. Ask questions in the chat, and we have some time at the end to answer them. And we can also follow up in the Materialize community Slack if there's questions that don't get answered fully. And we will send an email with links to some of the resources mentioned right after this. And we're going to be doing more of these meetups in the future. I think next month we're going to have Drizzly talk about their Materialize streaming data stack, powering some of their user-facing automation. And if you have anything else that you're working with on Materialize that might be valuable to the group, definitely get in touch. All right, without further ado, let me hand it over to you, Joaquin. I think you can take over screen sharing.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Okay, so here we go. So you should see my screen now. Welcome everyone to this community meetup, Materialize. I want to say thanks to everyone here, and thank you, Andy, for the warm presentation and introduction. And I liked it very much, the music that you've been using. So it has a nice energy. So let's begin. Let's begin with this meetup. First of all, let's do a brief introduction about Materialize and Streaminy. Andy has already talked about that. But from the Streaminy standpoint of view, we use Materialize as a streaming database to build real-time applications. So we can create views, tables, or Materialize views using Materialize. Okay, this type of tables or views like Materialize views has a huge benefit that we are going to see later. So we can use Streaminy as a visualization tool on top of streaming databases like Materialize. So we can run analytics, explore what is happening inside, and get more insights about our streaming data and our process. Okay, so we have this big focus on streaming data. So Materialize is a big enabler on all of this. As Andy was talking on streaming databases and that type of things, we can use Materialize to process and also to serve. We can process our data and also serve that data in the same place. So this is very useful because we can have our state in one place. And for those people that are not familiar with the name, for example, a state, is going to be the whole information that we have in our table or in our view or in our Materialize view. So having this state in one place can be very useful because we can query that place and we are going to retrieve the last state. If we have our processing tool in one place, and our database in other place, we are going to have our state in 2 places, and that can get very, very complex. And the other benefits are that we can run SQL, we can integrate with a Postgres client, we can authenticate, and there are other features like temporal filters, the tail, that I'm going to talk later about that on the next slide, about how we can use the tail to retrieve the update. And we have the Materialize views that are very fast. So as I was telling, Materialize is a big enabler for this because we can process and serve on the same place. So let's continue with the tail. That is a special feature that we can use on Materialize. So if we want to take the most out of, for example, Materialize, we can use the tail. We can stream updates from a table or from a view or from a Materialize view. We can stream the updates. So this has a big benefit because any change to that view or table, we can see only the update that we are doing to that table, okay? So this has the advantage that we do not need to ask all the time. We do not need to query all the time to this view to get all the information. We can get the first view, okay? We can run the first query, retrieve all the state, all the information that this view has, and then only get the updates, okay? So we are only asked for the updates that this table has and not all the time asking for the information. So we also have 2 optional features when we are running a tail or a cursor. That is to emit a snapshot. The snapshot is going to be the whole state that this table or this view has at the moment that we are running the tail. And then you have the progress. The progress can be very useful when you want to share the state or you want to see some information in your backend or in your process, okay? So you have to use the snapshot when you want to get all the state and then you want to get the update. Because, for example, if you run a tail without retrieving the snapshot, you are only getting the updates and you are missing your whole history, your whole state. So this feature is also very important because without the snapshot, we can render the whole table. For example, we are only going to render the updates. So that can be very useful when we are working with visualization tools. So if we go to the classic visualization tools, we run just one query, we retrieve the information from our database, and we render that. We can render that using a chart, a table, or anything, or just display a number. Okay, so this has been the way to query the information since a long time ago. So with the time series databases, for example, we started to see many BI tools or visualization tools that said, okay, I can tweak this to run every 5 seconds or maybe every 10 seconds. And I'm going to run the query again and again and again. So this was initially a good approach because you are going to retrieve the whole information all the time. You are going to process everything again, but you can render in almost near real time your information. This was good for example, time series databases, but for streaming databases, we can go even further. Okay, so that's where streaming visualizations appears. We can take advantage of the recurrent queries, for example, Materialize, because they have everything already processed. So when we are going to run a query, it's going to be very, very fast. The response is going to be very fast. And we can also run special things like the tail. And we can receive the updates and we can update our chart with only those updates. So we do not need to ask all the time, hey, which is the state, which is the information that you have on this table or on this view. So this can be even more faster than asking all the time the information that we have on our table and calculate all of that again. Because remember, when you are running a query, you have to do a scan, for example, if you are not using a filter, or if you are using a filter, you maybe are doing some type of aggregation and you have to calculate, the database will need to process that. So if you are using Materialize, you can take advantage more from that, okay? So that's where Streaminy appears. As a visualization tool, we want to take advantage of these type of things, of these features like databases like Materialize can bring us. We can use it to explore and troubleshoot Materialize, to run queries and tails using Materialize, and build the most important thing is to build the visualization and dashboards, okay, to get information, to get our state from our database and see that into a view. We can customize, we can share these charts that we are building like any other visualization tool or any BI tool, okay? And our main focus is all the time on streaming data. We want to see changes. We want to see our visualizations to change all the time with our data, because otherwise it's going to be very static with the classic query where we send a query and we render that. We are going to start to see that is very static. We say like, okay, this is not too much dynamic. My database is changing very fast because it's a streaming database, but the way that I see the information is very static. It does not reflect what the database has, the state that it has, or the update that it's doing. So we want to try to fix that on the best way and try to scale with that solution. Okay, so as you can see, we are going to use Streaminy to get information from Materialize and render that information in our front end. So I'm going to show you a brief demo on how to use Streaminy with Materialize. Here we go. We are going to log in. I already have an account set up for this demo. It will be empty. Over here, we can see that there is no view on the dashboards, and here we have the views. There is no view created. So the first thing that we're going to do is to create a view. I already have 2 instances of Materialize running. I'm using Materialize Cloud. So I also suggest you to sign up to the Materialize beta for the cloud. I've been using them, so it's a great tool. So if you want to add a new instance, we can go over here to add a new source. We can select Materialize, and here we are going to add all the configuration that Materialize brings us when we are setting up the database. We can add everything here, even the certificates, and we are going to encrypt everything and save that encrypted. We are also using encryption as threads. So we encrypt 2 times the information just to take care about the passwords and certificates. So I'm going to show first a brief example. This example is already in a blog, so you can go to that blog post and see how we made it, how we run the queries, how we built the Materialized views. You can let's see. I'm going to the blog. Here we can see the architecture on how it was built, the queries that we use to do that. Okay, we create a source to Kafka, we create a Materialized view, and then we run an aggregation on top of that to build these real-time charts. As you can see, they change very fast because the data on Materialized is changing also very fast. So we go back to our SQL editor. Here we can see that we have our source. We are going to notice because we have this box, this icon that tells us that it is a source. And then we have the Materialized views. Okay, here we have a Materialized source. Okay, we are parsing everything from Kafka to a Materialized view, and then serving from that source, from that parsed Materialized view, we are running an aggregation. So both are Materialized, so they are very fast because when you create a Materialized view, it's going to pre-process everything. So when we query that, the results are returned very fast. So for example, I'm going to run a query on the tweets aggregated. Okay, I'm going to use a limit to make it more easy to read. Here we go. So now we are querying this Materialized view all the time, very frequently, to retrieve the last result. As you can see, the data is changing very fast. And we can even go to create a bar chart, an area chart, or a bar chart. We can sort this information, okay? And we can see how it changed so fast and how it reacts to those changes. So this is just a brief example. We are now seeing different tweets that are happening on Twitter. We are extracting every word and render that on Streaminy. So we can even create this and then share with whoever we want. We can just share it, and I should have access instantly to embed also on any web page. Okay, here we go. We can see that it's working. So anyone can access to this, and we can embed this chart into our application. So let's go with another example. I already showed you how to run a recurrent query on Materialize. As you can see, you just press run, and we are going to run frequently the same query on your Materialize database. So let's try another thing. So here I'm streaming the Bitcoin price. I'm streaming different asset prices to a Kafka topic again, then using Materialize to parse the data, and then running an aggregation. I'm getting the average value of different assets, but this time I'm going to show you how to get the average value of the Bitcoin in the last minute. Okay, so here we have our two Materialize views, our source, and we want to query this one. We have the Bitcoin price over there. Let's see, we're going to retrieve everything. One thing that you will notice when you are working with Materialize, since you already write the queries to process everything, when you want to extract information, you will only want to select everything, and that's it, and maybe limit the size of the query. But you are just going to select everything and sort or use some order, but you probably are not going to create a complex query here, because you just want to see what's happening inside and get information that you are already processing with Materialize. So we're going to run this query recurrently. Here we go. Now we can see the average value that is getting updated every second by Materialize, and we are rendering that into a table. Okay, I'm going to create, as you can see, you can even create we can create for example a chart. I'm going to minimize this. Let's see. Okay, here we see everything. We can create an area chart, and as you can see, it's getting updated all the time, but we can also improve this experience. For example, I'm going to enable the streaming option. As you can see, this is more smooth than what we were doing. It's going to get updated all the time. So we are going to create this view. Let's call reference area chart. Okay, so we are going to create this one. Let's select another color because we want to use. Okay, there we go. We are going to create this one. And here we go. Here we have our area chart that is updated very well. So we've been talking about the tail. How can we get the most using the tail mode on Materialize? So to do that, we have a very simple button over here. Pressing this button is going to run a tail on a Materialize view or a table. It depends on what we want to work with. So we can just press this button, and we're going to run a tail on top of a Materialize view for this example. We can then sort everything, and as you can see, it's going to get updated every second as a recurrent query. It's the same results. So we are going to create this too. We're going to select another name. We're going to create a table. Okay. There we go. So we are going now back to our dashboard, and we are going to add the views that we have created. There we go. We have our table running the tail, and then we are going to use a chart. Here we go. We can see both things displaying the same values at the same time and in real time. We can see how fast the results are coming in and how we can read that data. And one important thing when you're working with recurrent queries or the tail mode, you are going to notice because of this. If you go to your network, you are going to see a huge difference on the transfer size. The tail is going to consume a lot less memory and network because we are only retrieving the updates. If you are currently querying the whole state of a Materialize view, you are going to retrieve the whole state. So that will have a huge impact on your network size and on your performance and different parts of your application. So this is very important. And here you can notice the difference between using the tail with a snapshot and the recurrent query. For this example, it's 10 times more, as you can see, and we are only requesting 60 rows on each query. So I'm going back to the presentation. I have a final final thing for this to see the difference and how this can make a difference in our build when we are working with AppSync or AWS or different services. So going back to the presentation, we have seen Streaminy as a visualization tool, how we can use it to build queries, to run queries and tails, build visualizations and dashboard using Materialize. So you can see how fast and frequently we can get the results, and the performance is quite good. So let's continue. So we've been working with Node.js. I know probably everyone here or every data engineer is not familiar with JavaScript or TypeScript, and maybe with Rust in case of Materialize community and Scala or Java. But Node.js for these cases, it can be very useful because we are using the tail. We maybe do not need to process anything, and we just need to move the data from one place to another. So Node.js can be very useful for these cases. They have also 3 classes inside the Stream library that you can access. Is native in Node, so it's very powerful when we are working with streams. So we can treat the tail as a stream because we are currently receiving updates all the time from our cursor that we are running on Materialize. So if we treat that as a stream, we can implement these 3 classes. Node.js has these 3 classes. The readable that we are going to use to read the data from our cursor that we are running on Materialize. I call the cursor and the tail the same. So if you are not familiar with Postgres or Materialize, a tail and a cursor are very, very similar. We are going to use this readable class to get information from our tail, then transform that information if we need to. If we do not need to transform, there's no need to implement that class. And then we can use the writable to write our information to other place. That can be our database, our front-end users. It depends on our use case. So this is very similar to old concept that we data engineers know, that is the ETL. We are going to extract or read the information, we are going to transform that, and then we are going to load it or to write to another place. So once we implement these classes, we can create a pipeline like this one. And this has Node.js implements an internal mechanism using events to communicate with between these classes. And they have a lot of things that are very useful for us. So for example, we can detect backpressure using these classes. It's very important to remember this when you are working with a tail, because we can start to read new updates. We are reading, and our transformation is going to take more and more process time. So maybe our transformation process is like overload, and we want to hold on just a few seconds. And this whole mechanism is already implemented inside these classes. So you can detect the back pressure very easily when you are using the readable class, and take a moment to stop sending information to the other classes, to the pipeline. So I want to send a shout out to Petros, that he also shared some knowledge on these classes running cursors. So it has been very nice. So it's very, very important to remember this. There's also a document that Andy can share after the meeting that has information about how to handle the back pressure using streams on Node.js. It's official. So I recommend everyone who wants to do this to also take a good attention to this post, because it's very good. It's over here, backpressure in streams. So you can use it to improve your code. So a general architecture using this, it will look like this. We are going to read our data using a tail from Materialize. We are going to transform everything if we need to, and then we are going to write. In this case, we are writing everything to Socket.io. It's a library from Node.js. We can use WebSocket, for example, or we can use another technology like AppSync, or you can use GraphQL. There are different technologies that you can use to do that, or it can be even a database. Or, for example, if you want to scale even more, you can use a PubSub technology, and that can be good too. So there are a few considerations that you have to take into account when you are using the tail. One is that you are only receiving the updates. After you receive the snapshot, you are going to receive only updates. So these updates needs to be sorted. If you have your data sorted, you will need to sort that. So you can do that on your client side, on your backend using transformations, or you can select the way you want to do it, but you have to consider that. Also, the fail. So since we are only receiving the updates, what happens if the connection fails? We are not receiving any more updates, and if we reconnect, maybe we miss a few updates and we are not going to display the data correctly. So that's a big issue. So the best thing for me to do on those cases is you just reboot the connection, and that's it. You can handle, you can have your state inside your application and check and have progress with controls and different things, but that can get very complex, and Materialize can, with only just a reconnect, is going to fix that. So I recommend to reboot the tail, and that's it. If you want to use an internal state to handle that, it's okay, but I recommend you to connect right directly to Materialize. And also the synchronization. Suppose we have two clients that are connected to Materialize, and they are both running the tail. We want a synchronization. Maybe one is receiving updates faster than the other one because one client is processing more information than the other. So we need to handle that. So my recommendation is also that if you want to use the tail to run visualizations, I recommend you to use the Streaminy. It's going to be more simple, and that's it. So if we want to compare, as we were looking with the example on Streaminy, running the tail versus the recurrent query, you saw that it was 10 times more the network size. If we go to, for example, AppSync, they are going to bill us by that size. By each update, they are going to bill us. So if the update has 5 kilobytes, that's very low, but if our update is more than 5 kilobytes, they are going to bill us twice. If it's more than 10 kilobytes, it's going to be 30 times more. So if we keep growing, our bill is going to get more and more expensive. So if our query is more than 5 kilobytes, it's going to be very expensive. So if we just do some math, we are duplicating our cost very, very fast. If we are recurrently querying our state, our Materialize view state, is going to be more and more expensive. And if our Materialize view grows up with the number of rows and the information size, that can be very, very expensive. So if you are using the tail, you're going to receive the updates and probably the payload that you are going to send between AppSync or your GraphQL API to your clients is going to be lower. Maybe the snapshot is going to be the same, but the updates probably are going to be lower. So if you want to get your bill lower, I recommend you to use the tail mode on Materialize, because obviously the updates are going to be a lot more smaller, and you can handle those changes in your front end, in your client, or you can apply different transformation also on the client side. You can take advantage of that. So, well, I just gave a lot of information about how Streaminy is using Node.js, how we can use Streaminy with Materialize to run queries, to run tails, how we can take advantage of the tail, what are the benefits and the cons. So I don't know if anybody has any questions by now. I don't know how I can take a look to that. Oops, it's not here. I think if I can stop sharing, I can take a look to that.
Joaquin, one question to start with is, if folks want to use Streaminy today, is it in beta, or what's the process?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that. Right now we are in beta. We are testing a lot of things and new features. We are testing different ways to connect to Materialize to get the best. But you can go to our webpage, sign up, and try Streaminy, so you can see how it works. and how you can visualize things using Materialize.